What is up, you guys? Welcome to today's training video. In today's video, I am going to discuss the concept of training volume and how people misinterpret the information around training volume and how they misuse it. And just to be clear, before we talk about volume, when I'm talking about volume, I am talking about the number of weekly hard sets performed near failure per muscle group. For example, if I perform a heavy set of bench presses, that would count as one set, one amount of volume, let's say, for my chest. So now that we have that out of the way, a lot of people have read that in the last couple of years, researchers have shown that performing about 10 to 20 sets per muscle group per week will result in optimal muscle gains. And while that is true, you have to not look at this black and white. 20 is not necessarily better than 10 because there are a lot of factors that you have to take in consideration. Your experience level as a trainee, your phase, are you gaining muscle on the calorie surplus or are you on a cutting phase? How is your life going? Do you have a lot of stress? Do you lack sleep? Do you have relationship problems? Those are all things to take into consideration. But okay, when you are, for example, a beginner, why the hell would you perform 20 sets per muscle group per week? Because when you are starting out and you have zero base, you have never worked out in your life, or the last time you've performed a set of bench presses was 20 years ago when you were back in high school, why the hell would you start out from 0 to 20 sets per week instantly? That is simply not necessary. When you start out and you haven't laid a solid foundation, you don't need a whole lot of volume, guys, because you're starting out from 0, and if you would only do one set per workout, per muscle group, 3 times per week, you would perform a weekly training volume of about 3 sets per week per muscle group, and that is going from 0 to 3, and that would already produce gains. Sure, it won't produce maximum gains, but hear me out. When you perform one heavy set near failure in the optimal hypertrophy range, which will give you the most bang for your buck when it comes to hypertrophy, which is between 6 to 12 for compound exercises. And I know there's a lot about rep ranges to be said, but I'm talking about the most practical, scalable, and most efficient rep range to train in. If you are talking about performing only one set in the most functional rep range to gain muscle and strength, you would already gain about 60 to 65% of your maximum gains for that workout. So by only performing one single set, you would already stimulate 60 to 65% of the muscle growth that you can potentially gain in that specific workout. So what does that tell you? It tells you that you don't need 40 sets for a muscle group. It tells you that you only need a couple of hard quality sets that allow you to go near failure, and that you simply have to do enough to stimulate and not annihilate. The second set you perform for that workout will produce about 80 to 85% of your maximum gains, and the third set will be about 95% of your maximum gains. Each set you perform after the third set will add to muscle growth, of course, but in diminishing returns. And that is where I want to go to. If you are new, or even if you haven't lifted before, or if you have been lifting but you haven't been eating right, you haven't been making any progress, you don't need a whole lot of volume. And I would even say for people who have a lot of potential to squeeze out muscle mass, I would stick to performing 9 to 12 sets per week per muscle group. That means a full body workout, or whatever split you prefer, an upper lower split, where you perform 3 exercises on the full body workout 3 times per week, which will result in a training volume of 9 sets per week, or an upper lower split where you perform, for example, 6 sets per workout per muscle group, which will also result in 12 sets per week. Or you can perform 4 sets on your full body workout. But if you begin, I would start with the lowest amount of volume possible that will produce maximum gains. And for most people, that will be about 9 sets, because they train each muscle group 3 times per week. When you have been lifting for 2 years, for example, you have laid a solid foundation, you have built a good amount of mass on your frame, you've gained a lot of strength, but you notice you are stuck on a plateau. You notice that you are simply not progressing anymore, even if you try switching up rep ranges, if you try training techniques, if you're eating more, you don't progress anymore. That may be the time to add additional volume, because there will come a point in time when your body will need more workload, more volume, in order to contribute to building more mass. But that is not for beginners. That will be for intermediates and late intermediates. And then you can slowly add 1 or 2 sets gradually to your workouts. Let your body adapt to the new workload. Let your body adapt to the new amount of volume. Don't rush it. Going from 12 to 16 sets per week per muscle group will be great when you are at a higher training level, when you are past the novice phase and past the beginning intermediate phase. That will be helping you to squeeze out more muscle mass and to get additional gains. And I'm only talking about like 10% or something, 20%, because the human body has its limits when you're not on drugs. That is simply a fact. After a certain point, you will always make most of the progress you will ever make in the first 2 years of lifting. That will be the most progress you will ever make, because you are totally new, totally fresh, and you have so much potential. After that, it will be diminishing returns. However, you can still make your physique so much better by addressing weaker muscle groups, getting denser, making certain body parts stand out. And I'm simply referring to muscle gaining phases here. I will continue about advanced trainees that go up to 20 sets per week, or maybe even higher. I wouldn't recommend that, but 20 sets per week. Most people who do that are advanced trainees who have already gained maximum amount of muscle mass, or near a maximum amount of muscle mass that they can gain, but they push up their volume in phases, and they go in phases where they, for example, if you have a really nice body, you've built a good amount of muscle mass, and you've gained a lot of strength, you are stuck, and you know that you've reached pretty much your natural limit, and you only have a couple of pounds to go. Then you can go on higher volume phases, where you keep the volume on the lower side for a certain muscle group. For example, if you want to specialize, go on a specialization phase where you perform higher volume for your, let's say, your chest and your lats, your back, you can perform about between 16 and 20 sets, hard sets per week for those muscle groups. And for example, you keep the volume lower for all other muscle groups, because training takes a toll on your body, and by pushing up the volume, fatigue increases as well. Now, if, for example, you've specialized for a couple of months, let's say 3 to 4 months for a specific muscle group or two, then it's time to go over to lower the volume for those muscle groups, for example, for the chest and for the back. And if you want to then specialize your quads and your hamstrings, perform more volume for those. However, like I said, I am simply talking about gaining phases here. When you are cutting down, you are not in a calorie surplus, but you are in a calorie deficit, which means that you give your body less energy, which means that your recovery will be slower. And less efficient. When you are on an energy deficit, it is not wise to perform a very high amount of volume. I would always recommend that when you are cutting, if you are on a cutting phase, as a novice, there won't be a lot of difference between a bulking phase or a cutting phase because you simply do not need a lot of volume. However, it has been shown that you only need about 1/3 of the amount of volume that you've used to gain muscle to maintain muscle, both on a maintain phase and both on a cutting phase. Because when you are in an energy deficit, you most likely won't set any heavy PRs on your big lifts. But the most important thing that you can try to do is to maintain your strength. And most likely you will lose a bit of strength due to less calories, less glycogen in the muscles, a little more fatigue. But strength loss should normally only be 5 to 10% of the maximum weights that you used. So knowing that, the main goal when you are on a calorie deficit is to maintain your strength as good as possible, because that is an indication that you are losing body fat and not muscle mass. However, I always recommend that you start out with the amount of volume you would normally use to maintain your muscle mass when you are on the maintain phase. For example, if I build up my body with a moderate amount of volume, about 12 sets per muscle group per week. And I always start out, which I'm now doing the conjugate training style, which focuses on one extra set that is focused on strength. But aside from that, I perform about 12 weekly sets per muscle group per week. In the beginning of my cutting phase, I'm now lean bulking, but if I were to cut, I would start out performing 12 sets. But as I get to very lean stages, I'm talking about sub 10% body fat, I do notice a decrease in energy, in strength, not severely, because I don't omit from any macronutrient, I still eat sufficient calories, but it's normal. You train hard, we have other responsibilities outside of the gym. What I then do, if I really need it, is eliminate one set, and I only go to performing 9 sets. So I eliminate 3 sets per week, which I personally perform a full body workout 3 days per week, which will result in performing about 9 sets per muscle group per week. But since I'm still performing a significant amount of volume, even though it's on the lower side of the volume guidelines, I still hold on to my strength and my muscle mass because I focus on lifting hard with the right intensity near failure, and I eat enough protein, and I give it everything I have, plus my recovery is ensured, and I give my body the proper stimulus to hold on to its muscle mass, to maintain its strength, but to still allow it to recover properly according to the amount of calories I'm eating. So you see where I'm going with this? You have to know where you stand in order to follow certain volume guidelines. You have to know for yourself and be honest with yourself that the amount of volume you choose is dependent on where you stand, which experience level you have in the gym, and which phase you are in. And like I said, sometimes there are times where people are stressed out, they have problems at work, with their family members, relationships, and they simply don't sleep well, they don't eat well, they don't recover properly. That may not be the time to perform a very high volume phase. That may be the time to taper it down, to just go into maintain mode, to give your body a break, but still hold on to the results you've built up so that you recover well. And then when you are feeling good again, then you can recharge, start a new lean gaining phase again, or start a proper training phase again. So volume, yes, it is a tool that should be used if you want to maximize your muscle growth, but don't abuse volume. You need a certain amount of volume. to gain muscle, to gain strength, and to build a solid foundation. For beginners, that will fall somewhere between, I'm talking about optimal here, between 9 and 12 sets per muscle group per week. For intermediates, that will fall somewhere between 9 to 15 sets per muscle group per week, depending on which phase they are in, a bulking phase or a cutting phase or a maintained phase. And for people who are very advanced, who have built a solid foundation, who are stronger than ever, who know that they don't have a lot of potential left, these people can focus on specialization phases, where for some muscle groups they perform 16 sets up to 20 sets for a couple of months, then give those muscle groups a break and focus on other muscle groups. That's how the pros train, that's how you do it, that's how you maximize your growth and maintain muscle mass on a cut. That's how you build your body. Be honest with yourself. It's a long-term game. Performing more volume as a beginner won't make a difference. It would only hinder your recovery. Know where you are and don't abuse it. That's pretty much it. Volume is a tool, it's not magic. Thank you for watching. I hope this video was useful. If you like it, give me a thumbs up. Share the video with somebody who you know might benefit from this information, and keep following the channel for more useful tips. Thank you guys.